Good evening, everybody. I'm very sorry about the delay. Hang on just a sec. I'm sorry, we had some connection problems, but everything is in order now. So I'll start again. Welcome to our webinar series, the second of the year. This is a series of 4, and it's the first one now. And we'd like to welcome Jean-Pierre Dumas, who has joined us all the way from Singapore. So it's very late for him, or very early, no matter how you look at it. And Niklas Genovese, who is here from Switzerland. Both of them very savvy in the crypto environment and the NFT. Both of them collect and deal with metaverse and platforms, NFT platforms like the one that I'm running, Wise Art. Wise.art is a vetted platform for fine art in particular, but also collectibles, and it's run by WiseKey. WiseKey being a specialized company in cybersecurity. So Jean-Pierre, welcome. We'll go first. Can you introduce yourself, please, and let us know who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, 16, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I hope you can hear me well.
Very well.
As you can see, it's sunrise where I am right now, which is over Central Park. No, I'm kidding, but I'll get back to that in a moment. I'm the co-founder and chief builder of a metaverse project called Vertical. So we like to think of it as the art and culture district of the metaverse. And I think the topic you have tonight as to what you do with your NFTs after you've bought them is exactly why we decided to build this. So I'll be happy to talk about that in a moment. On a wider scale, I'm an entrepreneur in tech, in Web3 projects. I like everything to do with Web3 and arts, Web3 and law, and there's a lot of interesting things in that space. And very excited to be part of this. So thank you for having me tonight.
It's our pleasure. We can't wait to hear more. Niklas, I met a part of your team in Davos last at the WEF Center, and I was very happy to discover Element. So perhaps you can tell us a bit of your background and what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm Nick. My background is actually, I used to be a professional tennis player for most of my life. But very quickly after studying math and finance, I became an investor and entrepreneur who really focuses on tech. And we started with this company called TokenGate, with the vision to tokenize financial assets, and very much drifted into NFTs in about 18 months ago, where we acquired an NFT platform called Elementum that exists already since 2019. And the Elementum is a curated NFT marketplace, which we are currently rebuilding and reshaping to make it something special with this new curatorial theme and new tech which we will provide.
Okay, so
what TokenGate does is basically 2 things. Is we provide technology for people who want to tokenize things, and the second thing is Elementum, which sells curated or in-house curated NFTs, with a guest speaker who will be here tomorrow, George Buck, and another whole curatorial team.
And when about did you switch from tennis into financial and this cryptocurrency environment? When did that happen? Long time ago, or at the very beginning?
So this cryptocurrency environment was always an interest of me, and I was privately interested since I guess 2014, where I saw that in my hometown in Zug, there's a lot of things happening regarding crypto. And then full time, I started about 24 months ago almost.
Okay.
I started full time in tech entrepreneurship and crypto. And yeah, collecting NFTs has become a passion of mine. So I guess I can share some insights of how I started collecting NFTs, etc.
Yeah, that would be great. And also the type of NFTs, perhaps, because it seems to be changing the trends very fast. Of course, we all know about the Beeple and the gaming industry influence, but since then it's moved on. And you've got some very old vintage that, you know, the illustrations that came out more than 10 years ago now that are hitting the scene. But it might be changing already, because digital art is very, the artists are very creative. And I think it maybe also this lockdown that we had with COVID sort of helped people to sit in front of their computer and for some artists to embrace it, whereas perhaps they didn't before. So it's interesting to see also what people collect and how it works. We all followed this Damien Hirst exercise with his art called Currency, where up until the last week, people were really wanting to keep the NFT, and then all of a sudden it changed. And in the end, a very small majority turned out that they wanted to keep the physical art. So it's interesting. What we also do at Wise.art is that we often link the phygital, like in other words, the physical work, and to an NFT. And it can be either a newly created illustration or animation or GIF, you know, inspired by a physical masterpiece that can be for sale or not. It can be in a museum, and we'll talk about that as well, how NFTs can raise funds for museums. Perhaps we've only got 1 hour. I should tell everybody that this is being recorded and that the link will be put online directly after the show. But perhaps we can start with Jean-Pierre and your really exciting vertical environment. I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
Sure, with great pleasure. Well, without further ado, here it is, but I'll explain more in a moment. But I think it starts with a story, and the story is we've been in the space since 2016-17, more on the theoretical blockchain side of things, and then crypto. And then the advent of NFTs has really sort of opened up a whole avenue of possibilities. And it started with less serious and fun things, but has evolved into art, into things to enjoy, and all kinds of utility. But there was always, if you like, a complication with what to do with the NFT after you purchased it. And so we thought up vertical, and here it is. So if I may, I'll just show you a few pictures, because I think that might be quite interesting. Hopefully I will have the rights to share my
I hope
screen.
so.
Let me see. Here we are. I don't know if that's visible for everyone.
Yes, it is. It's working perfectly.
Fantastic. So let me go here. So vertical really is, as I mentioned earlier, we think of it as the art and culture district for the metaverse. It's a metaverse new frontier for artists, and those are traditional and digital artists, NFT collectors, and pioneers of the metaverse. And this came about, as I mentioned, because more and more people own digital art, and more and more people own NFTs. And once you've purchased them, and you might have spent quite a bit of money on them, what do you do with them? The experiential part of owning an NFT is quite limited today. Of course, you can go and see your NFT on OpenSea. You can see it on a smartphone wallet, in 40 pixels wide, which is unfortunately not doing justice to pieces of art like Beeple's. And if not, you can go and create quite complicated NFT experiences in the metaverse. So we wanted to sort of change that by creating a metaverse which was a place for people to show and share their art. And that's how it started. And we decided, instead of making it flat and infinite, to make it small and vertical, and hence the name Vertical, which is a floating skyscraper, which you can see here behind me and on the presentation, which floats 1.9 miles high above Central Park in New York, and made up of lots of little community spaces, lots of little villages, little places where people can go and create a community, create a space, show their art, sell their art, exchange their art, have an exchange of culture, and really have a passionate moment in the metaverse around something of import. And we chose New York because it's, of course, one of the most fantastic places on the planet for digital art, and has an amazing and thriving art scene. And we thought we'd bring vertical there. And of course, having a floating skyscraper on top of Central Park is pretty cool. So we thought that would be a good place with a great skyline for all the residents. So I won't go into a lot of detail. I could speak till morning come, which won't sit well with all of you, so I won't. But here's some views. This is one of our units, which I like best, called the Tycoon Pad. It's really quite large, has amazing views of Manhattan. This is the internal view. There's a lot of public spaces in vertical, which are really important for the community aspect of things. So this is the Bonsai Lagoon, as we like to call it, where you have giant bonsai. So don't read anything into that. But it's a fantastic place to meet and share and have expos and link maybe the physical in the real world art with things happening in the metaverse. So I won't go on and on and on, but here are a few more shots. We like to make vertical a very cultural place. So there's all kinds of influences. This is a node to the 80s and 90s. For those of you of my age or older, you may remember the Walkman and the Game Boy. For others, you may look it up in Wikipedia. So yes, it's, I think, a fantastic place for NFTs and what to do with your NFTs afterwards. So I'll leave it there. I won't go on and on.
It's just a few questions. It's open to professionals, like it could be galleries, it could be other marketplaces like Element or Wise.art, and it could also be collectors or museums, right? And then you'll do events, and there'll even be music and anything to do with culture, really.
Fantastic. Well, yes, thank you for asking these great questions. So we've imagined different spaces which have different sizes, which are suitable for different kinds of people. And they go from the private collector who wants to enjoy his or her own NFT collection in a 3D environment. So that's a simple gallery as you have on the market today. And you have the ability to completely customize that with a few clicks. But it goes to bigger spaces, which are open to galleries, which are open to museums, which are open to corporates, to charities, to people who have and want to share culture and share, social impact and share things in the metaverse. So it does become a space for art in the widest sense, and we are bringing together the more traditional artists, digital artists, but also fashion, also winemaking, auto art, AI art. We even have a floor which is called Under the Influence, which is art made under the influence, which would be quite interesting. And we really want to make this inclusive and celebrating life and art and culture in the widest sense possible.
Well, that sounds great, Jean-Pierre. We'll probably get back as people have questions. I forgot to mention that people should ask questions on the Q&A box, which you'll see just down there. And please feel free to write me your questions. One of the questions that I had already before we started, and that goes direct to Nick, is, why am I inviting somebody who has a competitor, like a very similar to Wise Art platform? Well, I don't think it is competition. I think at this stage, there needs to be a lot of us, and Switzerland is very keen and very active. So I'm really pleased that there's more than just us, and that we can work together and probably have different sorts, just like there's many galleries out there. There can be many different platforms. What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I don't think there's much competition out there. It's really more about collaboration at this point.
Yeah.
And I think that the NFTs started because of great collaboration. That the original project, CryptoPunks, that really made NFTs this thing, worked out well because you had 10,000 pieces, and with with thousands of collectors that use them as their profile picture and so to speak, promoted the project collectively. And I think this community aspect is a very important part of NFTs, and something that we have just seen in bits and pieces so far, but I think can become much bigger, in the sense of right now we have centralized social media platforms that basically own everything that you put on there. But owning a digital asset or a digital collectible NFT, whether it's a collectible or it's art, we engage in a new way of social media, where you can actually own something that's digital and you can showcase it. It becomes a whole new atmosphere, or a new sort of dimension to social media, which only a few people, only like the few true NFT collectors are really experiencing. So we need different platforms like Jean-Pierre's, we need different NFT platforms, because we have lots of different styles and interests, and whether it's sports or art, there's a lot of different approaches. But at the end of the day, we're building a new decentralized social media internet with NFTs.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and we'll talk about Elemental in a minute. One of our founder, actually, Carlos Moreira, wrote a book called The Transhuman Code, and one of the big things that we put at the center or the core of all of our businesses is that the human needs to be in control, or needs to continue to run the thing. I mean, it's a human invention, and we need to be able to protect ourselves within that. And I think the blockchain environment and the NFT environment can really ensure that as well, including for old masters as well, and museum collections and archives and what they have in their inventory. And it will also open a lot of possibilities for works that are never seen, because you can see them digitally and you can collect them partially or not, or completely. So yeah, I think there's, even for the collectors, they've got, they can now really take a hold and be powerful in their collections and decide for themselves, and that will always be theirs, and it'll be in the blockchain for normally immutable times. Tell us a little bit about Elemental. How did that all happen? I know Georg quite well, and I know he does fantastic things with Bern and the Kunstmuseum and all that. So can you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, so it's Elementum with a U.
Sorry, I keep saying Elemental.
No worries.
Sorry.
So Elementum, we have sort of a new upcoming strategy, because these guys were in it since 2018, before people talked about NFTs, and they just wanted to have a platform that provides digital art. And when we took this over and we spoke, me and Georg and some other curators looked at it, and we realized that, what NFTs will matter once this hype is gone, or once the hype is over. And that's really the historically relevant NFTs. Mm-hmm. And Georg, as a digital art curator and specialist, who's been looking at generative art, generative photography from the 60s and 70s and 80s, knows the history of NFTs and the history of digital art quite well. And what we want to bring on Elementum is highly curated and selected, historically important NFTs, whether that's sort of launching or showing historically relevant digital art from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, or whether it's showing pioneers of our time who are basically the future of history. Mm-hmm. So yes.
Keep going, sorry.
So that's our approach at Elementum, to really show historically relevant NFTs and pioneers from the past and the present.
It's true that people tend to forget, but I mean, ever since the beginning of computers, and I'm not even talking Apple and Microsoft, but before that, when IBM came out with these huge machines, you know, there were artists like Vera Molnar, who's been working already in the 50s, you know, and she's now selling NFTs on with Sotheby's, and she's 90 some plus years old. And I think so in your case, the collectors would be people who know about this art history already, you know, before NFTs even came about, wouldn't you say?
Correct. It's our platform is very niche specific when it comes to generative art, generative photography, and also some AI art. But none of these NFTs have any quote unquote utilities or gaming or future promises. They're just about collecting art, really just art. And that's something that got me excited, because I feel like these pioneers have laid the groundwork for all of these this digital art revolution that we seeing right now, and they have produced amazing code and amazing work way before anyone was looking.
Absolutely.
And that's something I want to support and promote and showcase and build an awesome platform around that.
And what about in your case, would have you collected that type of, or did you start with the apes and the punks and the?
So yeah, I actually started collecting NFTs fairly early. A few things when NFTs were still Bitcoin based, like the rare Pepes, and you know, like Namecoin things, and very early NFTs, just because I was interested to see what you can do on blockchain at the time. Now you look back and they're sort of historically relevant and fairly decently priced. And I almost forgot about these things because they were just sort of tests.
Yep.
And in the meantime, I missed out on punks, unfortunately, but I collected an ape, which I thought is extremely overpriced, and sold it way too early. Because I didn't believe in this hype culture, and I was I was sort of surprised myself of how far the value of these things go, because I'm not an art collector. I have no experience in art. I have no background in art history or anything like that, or no idea how to contextualize those things. But in the meantime, you know, working 24/7 in that field, you realize that you're part of a new movement. And I like to collect things on art blocks. I like to collect things on Tezos at the moment. Yep. I like to, like on FX Hash, I like to collect generative art, and collectibles like profile pictures and are rather limited. But if somebody has like a really cool new invention of a profile picture that it's on chain or something like that, that's the type of things that get my attention and that I like to look at, because I believe these things are timeless, way beyond technology or hype.
It's interesting. I think in Europe we also have that approach of maybe not buying on a whim, or not buying just for an investment sake, and flipping and that sort of thing. What is it like in Jean-Pierre, in Singapore, in Asia? Is it completely different, the approach? You know, do you have many collectors, and what are they doing? Oh, we've lost you. You need to unmute.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, 16. I think as everywhere, it's you know, very different in terms of markets. But it's true that in Singapore and Hong Kong, I've seen a lot of passion and a lot of money chasing projects which might be interesting, and they tend to go very quickly. So I think there's a passion for speed, a passion for hype as well, but that can be much wider ranging in terms of types of projects than we could have seen elsewhere. So a lot of things to do with phygital, especially a few years ago, a lot of things linked to art, physical art as well. So interesting markets, and I think interesting markets with money where appreciation of the art is at the center of the purchase.
Yeah.
And again, very different from other kinds of NFTs, which are more utility based. But again, that the variety makes for an interesting space.
Yeah, I think the collectors, I've spoken with two. Well, one of them was at your event in Davos, and he was a guy from Dubai I'd learned about him already on YouTube, and he collects to look at his art. So he's got a variety of screens in his house, and his idea is to actually be part of this new trend, but then to keep them for his grandchildren to come. And the guy is fairly young, so I mean, we're talking 2 generations ahead. And then, so I thought that was an interesting aspect as well on how to look at them. I mean, people show them on their phone like photographs, or not. And I think that's also where it changes a little bit from the traditional world, as you were saying, Nick. You're not an art collector or an art historian by learning, but today people share, people show. You're happy to sell your NFTs or your art on the internet, which before was, like the traditional world. The traditional world had to be quiet and confidential and not so transparent. So that's interesting. I'm hoping that people will, collectors will start looking at spaces like Vertical so that they can share the collection openly as well. How do you look at your work, Nick? Do you look at it on your phone, or do you look at it at all, or what do you do with it?
I mean, with the company, we are organizing various exhibitions, sometimes from other people, sometimes from our platform, sometimes, for example, at Philips, we did an auction and an exhibition for 4 weeks in London, where we sort of the curation was a history of generative art. We had all of the top works from generative artists. Some were printed out, some were on screens, some were on a projector. And at home, I have some physical generative art and on a projector that I use sometimes, but mostly it's really on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I also, again, I think you did a show in Zurich. No, there's a gallery in Zurich now that has only NFTs and screens. Is that right?
I mean, actually the first ever gallery to show the CryptoPunks was the Kate Voss gallery where Georg was a curator.
Mm-hmm.
That was in 2018.
Okay, yeah, so a while ago.
So the Kate Voss gallery exists already since 2018 and only does generative art. But yeah, I mean, I think for galleries and stuff, it's quite hard to enter this sphere because it's something totally different than than regular art. It's very hard to find your niche or you find your sort of value when you come from the gallery environment.
Yeah, some are open, like there's Berlin based, or I think there's several places in Germany, but it's Nagel und Draxler. And at this last event at Art Basel, they worked with Kenny Schachter as well and his NFTs. So they had it's already the second fair that they're doing. One of them was like a small environment where you had to go in and it was all dark and you just had the screen. And this last time in June, they had them out in the open. So, I think that everybody's exploring a little bit and trying to find their ground. I'm interested in the collectors as well, if it's a lot of work to actually follow. If you know, like once you get into it, it's almost full time. So if you're just a collector like you would be of traditional art, you really need to follow the market and follow what's trendy and what's going on. And you have to be on the social networks like Discord, for example, and follow all the different communications. I know that I personally bought two samurai cats by Ando Hito, but I mean, they're having conversations all the time all over the world. And there's the French samurai cats and there's the Japanese samurai cats. And I mean, basically, I could be on my phone listening the whole day long if you know, if that's what you want to do. So I think to be a savvy collector, it also takes a lot of time, which maybe people aren't used to putting their in it right now. There's also the fact that, as I said, mentioned before, museums should be interested because it's a way of digitalizing the archives, which they're doing now. They've started to do. A lot of museums are not digitalized yet, so they're using the NFT as a side product of their work, what they're doing anyway as museum management. And I think that's an interesting concept, is to allow collectors to maybe invest in museum pieces either through fragmentation or just, you know, editions of NFTs. What do you think of that? Either way.
Do you want to go first, Jean-Pierre?
Sure. Well, if I may rewind, I think that for me, and because it's my personal case, I think there's a lot of flipping in the market where people are buying the trend and looking at this primarily because it's fun, but because there's money involved and so on, which I don't do. And so personally, I'm very interested in the art for what it is. And as an amateur or passionate amateur, I haven't got a background. I've done tech and business my whole life, so I don't have a background in knowing what, you know, who the famous artist is. But if I appreciate it, I will buy it in the same way as I would with a nice wine. I'm not a sommelier. I don't know all the wines in the world, but you know, I know what a nice wine is. And I think it's good to have a space in this world, in this Web3 world, in this NFT world, for you know, putting art back in the center of the NFT. The hype is good, flipping is good. The DJing culture, Discord is fun, is interesting. If you want to go down that rabbit hole. But you know, sometimes it's good to get back to the art, whether it's, you know, in a professional way or in a passionate amateur way. To answer your question about museums and you know, ownership or co-ownership, I think it's again going back to the value of the art itself. If you have the ability to have a fraction ownership, but also be able to enjoy it, share it, talk about it, then I think the experience is great. If it's just you know, an entry in the ledger saying that you have X% of this NFT, it's a little bit less interesting anyway for me. But so NFTs, I think, you know, are like any other token. They're just an entry in a database which happens to live on the blockchain. What sets the NFT apart is that it links to an image.
Yeah.
And so that gives a representation, and that gives a sort of something to hang on to and something to relate to as a consumer, as a buyer, as an owner. But what's really exciting is all the metadata around it. But if you take away the image, it's just crypto, pretty much.
Yeah, that's for sure. You need the image, you need the visual.
Yeah, so I think the visual and the experience, and if museums can crack that, as you said, they can show all the pieces that are hidden in storage. They can, you know, really make some money, grow the art, bring more people into the space. So I think that's very exciting. Yeah. So I hope to see lots of things on that side of the space.
Yeah, Nicholas, what do you think of all of that, and maybe the fundraising aspect as well, that it can help artists maybe to create the next exhibition, or it's a ways to hit a lot more people really than if you did an exhibition selling your paintings.
Yeah, I think those things are very tough to bridge, the real world of museums and the real world of you know, artists doing physical things. It's a tough task to do, because natively digital things, usually natively digital artists work better. I could compare this often to like you know, from TV to Web 2, for example, where you have CNBC and CNN do news, you know, do a news channel, and their audience and their content, and very well planned out and huge production and everything. And then you have YouTube with people like Joe Rogan, who just natively come from YouTube. That works much better than CNN trying to open a YouTube channel and promote it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's,
It's a little bit, yeah, the digital artist is the same. I mean, there's guys like Rafik Anadol, for example, who's very popular at the moment. He started in architecture, but I mean, he's been working with the computer side, or the computer renderings and the 3D renderings as an architect initially, and has moved into art. And now he's using all the different softwares to do quite incredible 3D things on buildings and things. And it's true what you're saying is that if you, and even going back to Vera Molnar, the fact that she was a computer data input person at the beginning makes the whole thing a lot different. It's more natural, I suppose. You're right. It's not transposing your eye-hand coordination to a machine.
yes, I think that's why with museums we had sort of failed projects, because we were saying one thing and the museums, I think, couldn't translate that in what we were trying to say, and they, with this misunderstanding and the fact that, you know, everything is natively digital, it's very hard to bridge that gap into the real world. And
Yeah.
I think slowly over time people will adopt and will understand. And I think similar to social media is that eventually we'll get to a mass adoption stage where where museums have adopted social media and everybody will post, you know, have their accounts and post about it, or similarly collect NFTs and showcase them. And I think that will be a natural evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on a webinar yesterday with some guys from India, and they were saying on a general aspect of NFTs as going for fashion and games, etc., not just art. And they were saying it's going to come naturally into people's every day. And he was saying by, you know, in the next 3 years, everybody will have NFTs and everybody will have a wallet, and it won't be anything. Right now, it still seems a bit difficult for a lot of people. A lot of the comments I get is you know, like, they like to touch, they like to own something that they can touch, and they haven't made that step, as you say, that it's okay to use digital art, and that digital artists who are you know, who have grown up with the digital, they're just as good, and it's just as difficult. They're very good craftsmen at what they do digitally. I've got a comment here. Somebody's online, and I happen to know him. He's a fashion designer called Chia Tanga. He's from the UK and works, has his collections with Selfridges, and he's very excited about the vertical. So Jean-Pierre, I'll put you two together after the webinar. But he's got some very nice projects as well, pushing African fashion, and he's going to do an event in Venice before the end of the Biennale. So yeah. There's lots to do there. I'll take this opportunity to remind people that they can ask questions, or if there's anything that they want to know that we haven't discussed, that would be great. I was also going to talk a little bit about the way to display. We mentioned it a little bit over the phone and everything, but I think there's going to be, with this metaverse or 3D environment, there's going to be more and more creativity on how to display it. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a square on a wall, which is what we're seeing a lot now, even in the projection. Like if you go in the metaverse today, the galleries, artists are still sort of onboarding or uploading their art directly on a wall. I happen to work a lot with Aboriginal communities, and obviously they were doing this before the 70s on the ground, all their little dot paintings with different materials. And then in the 70s, some guy called Jeff Barton came along and gave them canvases. And then the white man was saying, you know, like, it needs to be framed and it needs to be in a square because white people will buy your art if they can hang it on the wall. And that's completely against their nature. I mean, they, you know, they don't need a frame and a square, and they don't stop painting because there's no more canvas. And I think that's what the next step is. And someone like Rafik Anadol or Jesse Olsen or people like that, they've gone out. Like, you see buildings, and then they've got their art sort of going out of the walls and out of the framework, which I think is very interesting. And that's what's cool about you thinking the vertical upwards rather than spreading out horizontally. There's yeah, Nicholas, have you seen any great things, any great ways to display it, which is a little bit different maybe?
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of not having limits of space in the metaverse.
Yeah.
When it comes to displaying. That's why I'm not a big fan of land sales or buying land in the metaverse, because I think that's a ridiculous way to raise money. And only purpose is really to raise money and to create some sort of artificial scarcity. But that's why I'm a very big fan of this platform called OnCyber, oncyber.io, where you buy spaces and you can hang your art there. You have sort of your own personal gallery or museum space, or something like Jean-Pierre is building, where you don't have to be limited by any, you know, realistic space, and you can showcase your art there in sort of a more community-centric way, rather than buying your plot like it's, you know, real life and trying to build something there. I think it's cool to display natively digital art also in digital spaces.
Yep.
And then physically, I mean, if somebody can give me a better solution than screens, I'm happy to look forward to that.
I would say project it on the wall or on your building or on the next ski slope when it snows again.
Yeah. AR or anything like that. I mean,
yeah,
very interested to see these evolvements.
There's a guy met from Hong Kong, and he's definitely thinks that in the physical world we're going to be living, well, the majority of the population will be living in spaces smaller and smaller, but they will have projection or screens on the walls, like on an entire wall in their house, and from there they'll look at the garden or they'll look at whatever they've bought. You know, like you can have a party in the, I don't know, in the Mirror Hall or the ballroom at Versailles from your little flat in Hong Kong. And I sort of quite like that idea. And then apparently the very, very wealthy will have massive properties physically somewhere with no screens at all. So how is it in vertical? How does it actually work? Like, artists can come, you know, is it affordable? Is it something accessible to most people, or?
It's very affordable, and there's a lot of space that's actually reserved and given away for free to people who deserve to talk about their culture and their art, and who haven't purchased the space. So I think vertical is really to bring people together. Maybe going back to what you were saying, I think I was speaking to a gentleman who was running a company that makes museum displays for all the very expensive art displayed in museums. These are tempered glass, protected, atmosphere controlled. And he mentioned to me, and for me this was enlightening, if museums want to recreate in the metaverse what they have in real life, it will never work.
Yes.
And it's the same in vertical. We are being able to create something without regards to the laws of nature and the laws of physics. So we can have space that is quantum, we can have space that is unlimited, even though it looks, or it should be, much smaller. And so that gives us a lot of opportunities to go in a very wild way, in every direction we want. We have spaces, I mean, the tower itself revolves, so you have a fantastic view of Manhattan at any time when you look out of the windows and look out of the balconies. But it's really a space where everyone can come, including people who don't have a unit or who haven't purchased a space, or who want to, share their art and their culture. And it's really something, for the people. There are some more expensive units. We are a business. We do have to operate the project. But the most of the units are not expensive, to answer your initial question. So a few hundred.
Imagine Nick buys, has a space, puts his collection in there. I would like to visit. I don't have any NFTs. I don't have a space. I can be invited by Nick.
So the space that Nick has purchased is a space that is in 3D, where things are displayed on the walls. These can be NFTs. They can be images that with one click can become NFTs because you like it, you want to make it an NFT, but Nick doesn't want to pay for minting and doesn't want to make an NFT unless somebody is interested. It can be a video. It can be an experience where you go in and a little game happens, or a little a dream world happens where you experience something in 3D. It can be a portal to many different experiences. Mm-hmm. And Nick, with a few clicks, can redecorate his space, rebrand it, make it the way he likes, using the skins and things of that nature. And it's as customizable as we can make it. I think the experience will come in a few years' time when the technology enables us, the hardware technology enables us in AR to really get a virtual experience.
Yep.
And I think more and more hardware is coming our way to enable that. But even today, I think that's going to be very, very interesting to be able to play with the limits of physics, to go beyond what exists in the physical world. But if I may, because I'm a very big proponent of real reality, so going outside and seeing trees. I think metaverse is nice, but it's good to have, to keep some space for nature, some space for the real life. So maybe for someone promoting metaverse, it's a weird discourse I'm holding, but I think it is one part of life. It shouldn't be everyone's everyday life all the time.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, we've got only 5 minutes left, so I'd like to thank you both. It maybe give you the word of the end, and maybe also if you could have a word about a word of advice for those collectors out there who are thinking, I'd like to sell or buy more, or when is the good time to sell? Maybe Nick, you know that better. And you just said you sold too early when you did get rid of one of your NFTs, but how does one do it? Do you go back to the same platform where you bought it, or do you, and how much of it is advertising? Do you need to be on the community first, or how does that work? How do you flip it?
Oh, I think we're all amateurs here, but
okay.
But I mean, for selling, you just sort of list the NFT, what you think the value is. If you want to get rid of it fast, you put it at the floor price or whatever. There's like value estimators. But I mean, if you're really into collecting, it takes like work, and you need to know what's, who's who in terms of the artists. You need to understand like what are the current trends, and try and time your purchases and sales too early rather than too late, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that's very good word of advice, and it's probably like any other collection. Same with yeah.
You can only do that if you're like have done your hours of research and your hours of interacting in real life and in in these different social platforms. But yeah, I mean that's really the key, is the interactions and the understanding, and making, you know, developing your own taste for it is very important in my opinion. That's why I like NFTs as a word more than the metaverse, is because it's a NFTs, you can still interact with people in real life, and
Mhm.
that's something that is important to me. And that's honestly, most of the NFTs that I bought came or sold came from interaction in real life at different conferences, at you know, meeting the artists,
Yeah.
meeting the platform builders, and that's how I started. You know, that's how I make my decisions. At the end of the
Yeah,
day.
I think that's for most people the same. Like I've going back to the art fairs this year was a real pleasure, and you know, walking around with people at the Venice Biennale, it was also like, it was so invigorating. It was great. Listen, I won't make it too long. We've got 2 minutes. I'd just like to say that the next webinar is going to be same time, same place, Wednesday, the 14th of September. And I hope that many of you will join. Both Nick and Jean-Pierre are to be found on LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with all those, you know, and have more insight and find, get more advice, I'm sure you two will be open to connecting. That's what the community is all about. I'd like to thank you both very much and hope to see you soon, meet you in the flesh one day.
With pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank you very
bye.
much. Thank you very
Bye.
much. Goodbye.